Okay, first of all, thank you to CoCreate Humanity for this opportunity to participate to this webinar today. And I'm very happy to have all of you today. Before the recording, we presented each other. We had a little discussion already, but now we'll start to discuss a bit about what's at stake for the accompanying expatriate spouse. And how do you find actually the right balance despite the status of expat spouse? So just shortly, my name is Nancy Bonamy. I'm Swiss from the French-speaking part. I'm a certified coach in professional and personal transition, and I accompany specifically expat spouses and humanitarian workers who wish to navigate their transition with agility. I'm an multi-expatriate since more than 28 years. I live currently in Yaoundé in Cameroon, and I worked for 10 years in the humanitarian sectors, and I have been an expat spouse for now 10 years too. So that's a bit about me, but I will tell you a bit more about me a bit later because it's linked to what we will discuss today. So if you agree, we'll start with the program of today, so the content. So we'll first speak about what's at stake for the expat spouse. So today in this webinar, we have mainly expat spouses. So you know well what's at stake, but I think it's a good reminder and a way of acknowledging that you are maybe not the only one feeling what you are feeling. Then I will give you 3 keys about understanding a bit what's going on behind the scenes, what is the impact of all these things at stake, and then 4 steps to find your place and your balance, how you can do that as an expat spouse, basically. So you can change the slide. So as you know, the accompanying spouse is the person that follows the partner holding the professional project. There are many terms to describe actually an expat spouse. We speak about trailing spouse, accompanying spouse, dependent. None of them are very dignifying, if I may say it like that. But for the sake of clarity today, I will mainly speak about the expat spouse. So that's the way I will call us all. And this, if this webinar is primarily aimed for the expat spouse, it's as well discussing things that may help those around expat spouses understand a bit better what is at stake for them. Should it be the partner? Should it be HR or the employer, to better understand the challenges they face, basically. With my presentation today, I would like to mainly try to facilitate awareness, actually, to help you normalize your situation, like I said before, and understand that you are not alone in what you are experiencing. And like we said at the beginning, it's an hour presentation, and then that is recorded. And after that, we have an hour discussion between us, around an hour discussion between us. So, Sebastian, you can change the slides. So let's start. This is it. You have taken the role of accompanying spouses, whether you have been an expat for a long time or for the first time. When you put up this special status, it's a big life change. I don't know what was your reaction when you learned that you will accompany your spouse on expatriation. Maybe it was mixed feelings. Maybe you were motivated. Maybe you were worried about that. The reaction vary a lot, actually, from one person to another. But to start today, I will start with the good sizes of this status, because there are a few. So you can go on the next slide. So with this new role, it gives you the opportunity, and it's something like that we think, okay, I will go abroad. It's to discover and to enjoy a new host country that is often filled with discovery, with novelty, with adventure, and so on. Another good point is that sometimes you approach that feeling that, yes, it's time, it's the right moment to reinvest my family and my personal life, because sometimes we had less time, and we know that we will have this opportunity. Another good aspect of it is maybe to seize opportunities to do something different. For example, to learn a new language, or to go back to school, or to prepare a career change, or to invest a personal project, different ways that you can do it. And one thing that is as well often interesting when you live as an expat and expat spouse even more, is that it's an occasion to kind of reinvent yourself outside your usual context. Because when you are in expatriation, you are leaving the people that know you well, and you kind of discover a new freedom about who you want to be today. There is nobody who has expectation about who you should be today and how you should be. And it's often an occasion actually to really reaffirm who you want to be and to create maybe something new. So that's few of the advantages when you put up this new statue. I think it's some of the big pluses. There are probably other ones. It's at least the one with which I started with this new statue. And even if I started with this new statue in a situation where I was kind of happy to start with this statue, I faced actually a lot of challenges, and I would like for that to explain to you a little bit what was my own experience, so that you can that we can discuss from there as well. So you can go on the next slide. Is it okay? Just to check for everybody, do I speak too fast? Is it clear enough? Connection fine?
It's okay. Yeah.
Okay. If anything, just tell me. So that's my timeline with a lot of information, because so just it's to say it shortly, but I was born in Kinshasa and live in Germany and Switzerland. So I was a little bit an expat child too, even if I don't, yes, I remember some of it, but I think it shaped my decision afterwards as well. So in green, I have put my expat life as the holder of the professional project. And for me, it was the easy transition, actually. So at the age of 21, even if you will see there are a lot of changes, but at 21, I embraced the expat life in age development. At that time, I worked as an elementary school teacher in Madagascar. After that, I went to Bordeaux in France to follow who I thought at that time would be the love of my life. But that's another story. But it's just that because I followed him, then I changed my work as well. I started to work as a manager for professional musicians. And when this love story ended, I wanted to go back to the humanitarian field. And it's when I applied to the International Committee of the Red Cross, the ICRC. And from there, I started to work for 10 years. I worked actually with the ICRC in various countries, in Palestine, in Chechnya, in Congo, Sudan, Iraq, and as well 2 years at headquarters. All this transition happened for me, at least, very naturally, despite the fact that I changed 3 times jobs and drastic career reconversion, basically. But they happened at ease. And it changed when it changed professionally. It changed for me the day I met my husband, my future husband. I didn't know at that time it would be my husband. And he was as well working for the ICRC. So we met in Congo at that time. And it started to be a bit more complicated because we started to need to look into the dual career. And it was not just my choices, but it was choices at 2. So some of you mentioned before that they are in this setup where there is a dual career as well. So at that time, when I met my husband, actually, I was his boss because I was deputy head of delegation and he was the head of sub-delegation. And if I mention it, it's just to say that it confirms what a lot of study shows, is that the expat spouse often had a job and a real career with responsibilities before becoming an expat spouse, a lot of them. So that's as well something that is at stake. We'll see a bit later. So in blue, you see that what was at stake for us, it was that we had to decide who would do what. We were in the same organization as well, who would be in a management position, who would be more program coordinator. We experienced as well the fact that we were sent sometimes in different countries. And then we had the joint mission in Iraq. It's the year we married. And then in 2007, we experienced as well the return back home in Switzerland. We are both Swiss, which is as well a huge transition as such. After, for me, it was 13 years abroad, actually. And once back in Geneva, for me, a lot of questions started to pop up in my head. I didn't know if I should continue in the humanitarian world or not. And why? Because I was facing several transitions. One was this return back home, which is a huge change. Another one was a family transition. Like one of you mentioned as well, I became mom of two children. And for me, it was a big change because it was not only all about my work, but I wanted as well to be present for the family. At the same time, at that time, I was around 40, so I experienced the midlife crisis as well, where I was starting to question myself, who I am today, what do I want for the rest of my life, which are healthy questions, but it's a transition that is sometimes a bit complicated. So all that together put me in a situation where I didn't know what I should do anymore. And I was in a long phase of questioning of what might be my next professional or personal chapter. I went back to teaching in Switzerland, but I quickly realized that it was not exactly what I wanted to do, because it was good for the family, but maybe not taking into account my professional experience that I had in between. And I decided finally, after 3 years teaching, to quit, not knowing what I would do next. And by chance, it's at that time that my husband was offered a job in New York with the ICRC, still more on a diplomatic level. And since I had no job anymore and he had this position in New York, it was decided that I accompany as an expat spouse. It's when I took, we start here with the color orange. It's when I started with this statue. So when I started with this statue in 2013 as an expat spouse, actually, I was quite happy, because I was in a phase where I didn't know what I really want to do. My children were very small, 3 and 5 years. I thought it's a great opportunity to take care of them, to have more time with them, to have more time for me. So I went to New York. It's as well a kind of an easy expat, of course. So I was very happy about that. But however, I soon realized that taking on this role was very ungrateful and was not as easy as I thought, because full of stereotypes, because I was finding it increasingly difficult for me to see in the other person perception that I was just a housewife in their eyes. And for me, it was difficult to find my place. So I started to look into opportunities to return to work. And it's when I realized that it was very complicated. Even though I was in New York, even though I knew English, even if it's with an accent and not a perfect English, but I had already two advantages. To be in a big city where you believe that maybe it's easier, but actually my visa and the work permit attached to it didn't allow me to work, except if no American person could do what I was doing. So that was a big obstacle at that time. I had no support and no idea about the local market, about how to go about the job and so on. So I faced really a lot of challenges. So I finally decided not to look for a job, and I decided to go back to school instead. And it's when I spent a year at New York University to study professional and personal coaching, as well as other fields. And it's thanks to these studies that I finally found my calling, a job that combines my past experiences and everything I love, basically. I could set up a mobile online business, thanks to the coaching as well, and follow actually my husband where he was going. So that was the good thing for me, to have this nomadic job. But I will not go in detail here, but it's, even if I have that, it's not always easy as well, because changing country means that you have to check again what is the working permit, what the authorization. If I told you a little bit about me, it's to explain that I found it much more difficult to take on this role as expat spouse than any other. Even though I worked in difficult contexts and so on, I found that finding your balance and your right place as an expat spouse is really not easy. And that, even though today I have found my place and my balance. And the reason I'm telling you my story is just to highlight some of the challenges we will discuss today. And I would like to underline as well that it's my story. Of course, your story is not the same one. Each story is very unique. And for me to find my balance was to set up a mobile business and to work. It's not necessarily like that you find your place. For other people, it's to find a personal project, to work or not work. Everybody is different. So it depends really on each of us, basically. You can go to the next one. Now I suggest, now that I spoke a little bit about who I am and what brings me here and why do I speak about that, that we look a little bit into what's at stake for the expat spouse. I think most of it's you are familiar with it because most of you have already experienced the status in a while. But it's a reminder and just to understand that you are really not alone in it. Sorry. So let's, you can go to the next slide. So the question is this status a sinecure or a priesthood? Actually, what's at stake is the first thing is that you are experiencing a rupture of your identity. You are no longer an independent woman or man, but the partner of your spouse. And given that 85% of expat spouses worked before taking on this statute, the main difficulty as a spouse is to find your place and to reshape your identity. It's really about that, not only with the statute, but also with the local constraints and opportunities of your hosting country, of your expatriation, or as well taking into account that for most of you, you change countries regularly. Another problem or another thing that is at stake or another challenge is that you face a very specific problem is you have everything to do and nothing to start with. Now it's still on the present. It's the second one. What do I mean by that is that your spouse who is an employee integrates a work, a team, a framework, if you want, that he knows well, even if it's in another country. And he's often supported in this transition with briefing, meetings, colleagues, etc. Your children, even if you accompany them in that, but they find as well a new setting. It's their school. And in their school, they can meet kids of their own age, integrate their routine and learning process. And little by little, they are as well in this frame, basically. But you as an expat spouse, you are the only member of the family who does not integrate any structure, any family or framework, basically. And you are therefore facing this problem that you have everything to do and nothing to start with. And it means that as an expat spouse, you are as well in direct contact with the environment to find your marks and the one of the family, to create a social network, to build a system network, support network as well, doctors, nannies, everything that you need when you are somewhere, to seek out information about activities for you, but as well for the kids and for the family, to deal with administrative and logistical hassles often, depending on the countries as well. And that's the big thing as well, depending on the country, it's sometimes particularly challenging due to cultural differences, but as well to security constraints or language barrier, like it was mentioned before. If you don't speak the language, the local language, it can be really complicated at the beginning. The third thing is the high financial and plus dependence. Now, 61% of expat spouses say that the most difficult thing to cope with is the loss of their financial autonomy. In many cases, even if you have a work, you earn less than before. And that's the fact that you don't earn any money or that you earn less money contributes often to this feeling of lack of recognition. And it requires as well in your couple a lot of readjustment, a lot of communication on how to deal with that. And it took time for me to understand that we are not only dependent financially, but as well on a lot of other levels. The visa, that will then have an influence on the work permit, but as well insurances are attached often to your partners. The loss of pension for retirement or unemployment insurances as well, and the different other administrative logistical aspects that are often passed on by your partner through the organization, the safety rules as well you have to observe, or sometimes your travel, or if you can take the taxi or not, is regulated by the organization of your husband because you accompany him. So that's some of the big challenges. And the last one is the difficulty or even sometimes the impossibility of working. And for this one, I have done a special slide because it's a big one. Everybody is okay? I see nobody actually. So I ask, but I don't see you. So, but I believe so. Huh? The news should be fine. So, all you must do is working. It's what you hear probably sometimes from people abroad saying, why don't you find a job? Or often we go on an expat saying, oh, no problem, I will easily find a job with my CV and all my experiences. 85%, like I said, expat spouse worked before, so often they want to find a job. 75% have the same level, a very good level of education, and often the same level as their spouse. And out of them, 83% of expat spouse are looking for work, at least at the beginning, because then when it's complicated, sometimes it's less. Yet only 40% out of this 83% finally find a work abroad, 47% with a reduction of salary, and 28% with a professional regression. They don't, and that includes as well when you go back home, unfortunately, often. So for me, these figures are striking figures, actually, and they demonstrate the complexity of being an expat spouse. It's not so easy as we think it would be or it can be. You can go to the next slide. Thank you. So first, like we mentioned already, or like I mentioned for my case, visa and work permits restrictions, depending on the country. There are some countries it's clear before you go that you will not be allowed to work, basically. Then language barrier, like it was mentioned, that's a huge one as well, depending on where you live. The non-recognition of diplomas or certification, there are a lot of professions that needs to be, that they don't accept the certification. For example, nurse, medical, psychologist, or other profession as well. The lack of knowledge of the local job market is a huge obstacle as well, and not having a network on the spot. So you have to build that first before being able to find a work. Sometimes the working condition and administrative implication can be as well complicated, discouraging. If it's the salary, local salaries, for example, so then you will have to balance, is it really worth to work or not? In some countries, like in the US, you have only 2 weeks vacation allowed per year. So when you are an expat, if you can go back only 2 weeks per year. So there are as well this kind of consideration sometimes. The uncertainties about the length of your stay, of course, that's not easy when you cannot project yourself, when you don't know exactly how long you will stay, how to explain that to a future employer, and how to deal yourself with that. The dual career issues, like we said before, in some countries, childcare is very expensive and it's therefore quite complicated. You don't have a family support system since you are abroad. And the last thing is, like we mentioned before, the fact that you must find all the information on your own. I give a quick example. When I was in the US and I wanted to set up my own business, I was told I'm not allowed because of my visa. Since I didn't take it as a no, I I contacted a lawyer, and it's thanks to that I finally understood that yes, I'm allowed to work as long as I'm setting up my own business. So to have this information, it took me at least 6 months, and then to have the work permit for having my own business, it took me 4 more months. So it's really sometimes complicated. So conclusion, you must constantly, as an expat spouse, draw on your emotional resources to reinvent yourself and to go with what is possible or not possible in your host country. Next. So here is just, I let you read it by yourself. It's just 2 persons that actually explain that. When they started to as an expat spouse. You can go to the next one. So now we discussed the different challenges. And on the top of these different challenges, there is one difficulty that we forget, or that at least impact us often a lot, is that we are stuck with a big label on the forehead that is full of stereotypes with a strong impact on our self-image, self-confidence, and self-fulfillment. Depending on the person, of course, but most of the expat spouses I accompany are really impacted by this label. Little by little, they started not to believe so much in who they are and what they have to offer, and so on. So this label is given to you by the society, the family, the friends, who often perceive your life as privileged and believe that you should assume the role without complaining because you have an easy life, especially in certain countries where you have as well help and so on. the employer, the HR of your partner, even his colleagues sometimes, have the same image. They think you have such an easy life. And employers or organizations often see you mainly as additional cost and hassles, and not so much as somebody that is important for the success of the expatriation of the employee. Then your partner, even if he's supportive, the fact that your roles change in the couple, it requires a great deal of communication and a constant adaptation to find your places and not to de facto be responsible of all the matters at home as like a housewife or houseman at home, house husband. So it's a major shift in the couple as well. And then yourself, maybe the expat spouse herself, himself, you probably are putting a lot of pressure on yourself to be very busy on all fronts to justify your role, with that terrible feeling sometimes of guilt that when you take a little time for yourself, or when you dare to buy something for yourself because you are so dependent. So that's something that is often impacts the expat spouse and is at stake, basically. So your status is not valued, is not recognized, is misperceived, misunderstood. And it implies a lot of social pressure, expectation, and judgment that are on your shoulders. And to be frank, even if I work now, it's something that I often feel still. I still have the label of expat spouse who is responsible of everything. So I don't know for you, but so next slide. Just to remind you, I'm sure you know what is your added value, but since there is one HR and there may be HR people listening, it's very important to remind that you are much more than the label that's stuck on your forehead. It has been proven that your role is decisive on several levels. First, you are the pillar of the expat family. You are the person de facto that is responsible for putting in place everything for the employee and for the family well-being. And this in turn has major implications, positive or negative, depending on how it goes, on the success of the expatriation of the employee and of the family. So the well-being of the expat spouse, the well-being of the family has repeatedly often been shown as a determining factor in the decision to go on expatriation, to extend or not, to accept a new assignment or not, and so on. So it's really important that the family and the spouse is well as well on the expatriation. It has an impact on the expatriation as such. And the second thing that's everywhere the same, but it's even more important on expatriation where everything has to be put in place again, set up, is that the employee will be much more efficient if, thanks to the expat spouse and everything that he or she is doing around this expatriation. So it's important to know that. Next slide. With regard to support, so you may have all different experiences on that, but unfortunately, most of the time, the spouse is not supported in their career or their development or integration. It's often overlooked by organizations. We have figures in the private sector, only 6% of spouses receive support when looking for a job, and only 20% of them when returning back from expatriation. I have no figures for humanitarian organizations, and that, yes, there is support for school fees often and for accommodation, housing, these kind of things. But to really help the expat spouse for his integration or personal development or professional development, there is often nothing. So next slide. So we saw the different things at stake, no support, the fact that there is no support, that you have this label, and the fact that there are several challenges when you try to find your place actually in expatriation, and that has an impact on you. And what kind of impact? Profound questioning about your identity. I don't know if it's your case, but often we question, who I am today, do I want to be, who I am with this statue, who I am today, basically. There is as well a major upheaval on your basic needs. Your needs change a lot because of your situation that has changed a lot. Often there is some emotional turmoil, you worry, you have doubts about yourself or about the future, some frustration and a lot of questioning. Often I can see that there is a loss of self-confidence or even self-esteem, and sometimes possible exhaustion, boredom, or loss of meaning as well. So that's often exacerbated by the fact that an expat spouse is often alone and unsupported, and facing, it's not always easy to speak about your situation, about how you are feeling, because the people who are not expat spouse don't understand very well what your situation is. So often what happens is that you come at, yes, it was, you could, yes. It's when you are there, when you started as an expat spouse, and after a few months or after a few years, it's depending on each of us, you start to feel that you are lost and that you may have lost your way. Next slide. And you start to question, to ask yourself a lot of questions. Who I am outside my role as a spouse and parent? How can I find my place and balance as a spouse? What do I really want? And what can I expect? How can I justify all these years without working? That's a huge one when you want to relaunch yourself in the job market. Will I be up to the challenges? Or how do I go about it? Recently, I heard that 64% of the expat spouse find themselves looking for their place. That's the main thing. Most of the expat spouse are just looking for their place precisely. So I don't know if it's how you feel, but it's okay. Thank you for the term. So here there is a little testimonial of a person I accompany who said that at the start. So here we spoke a little bit, or quite a lot, about the challenges. I don't know if you relate to some of the challenges, about the impact it may have on you, about the questioning. If you have experienced some of them. We'll discuss more in detail your personal situation after the presentation. But what I would like to propose right now is 3 keys to help you better understand what's going on behind the scene, actually. It's a way to help you normalize your situation. So you can go to the next slide. So three keys to understanding. So the first key, wait, I just drink. You can go on the next slide. The reshaping of your identity. Actually, you have several identities in yourself. Professional, or not at the moment, but yes, but professional, personal, family, social, cultural identity, and even a virtual identity, if you are a bit on the social networks and so on. All these identities, they change and they evolve throughout your life. For example, the day you become a parent, your identity changes. You have this identity in addition to the rest. When you change jobs, you don't have the same identity if you say I'm a teacher, if you say I'm a humanitarian. So it changes as well. When you learn from your experiences, whatever happens in your life, it has as well an impact on your identity. If you start with a new passion, it's the same. It's shaping as well your identity. And of course, the day you take the role of expat spouse, that's when you take this role, it shapes your identity as well, or it's there. So you take a totally atypical role at that time that impacts your identity, and in the eyes of those around you, and in the eyes, in your own eyes as well, basically. What is important to remember there is not to forget that when you stop working, and here I'm not just talking about the spouses, expat spouses, but anyone who find themselves unemployed one day, something very special happens. In the eyes of the society, you lose your identity. Why? Because unfortunately, in your current society, we are often seen only through this identity, the professional one. So, and you can see that, and that's often one of the challenges for an expat spouse when you are socializing, when you are outside and people ask you, what do you do? You are often embarrassed to say, what do you do? Because you don't know what to answer. And it's often the first question we ask people, what do you do for a living, basically? So our profession tends to define us in our own eyes and in the eyes of others. And so when you are not working, no longer working, it's difficult to define yourself to others and to yourself. And that's the problem you may face as an expat spouse. Not to mention that, in addition, the loss of your professional identity has also a direct impact on your social and financial identity, like we mentioned before. So it's a fact. We cannot change that. What we can work, you can go on the next slide, is to understand that you are in a reshaping of your identity, and to understand that you have to reshape it in a way that is good for you. So you are struggling right now with a baby. You are struggling, or maybe not anymore, but if you are here today, maybe it's because you are struggling a little bit with your identity and to find your place, actually. So what you need to remember first is that your identity is multiple. It's not only the professional one. It's not only the financial one. It's not just about work. So what you need to do is to give time and to give a lot of attention to your identity reshaping, and to take stock of your whole identity, to solidify the other identities, not only work. You can, for example, ask yourself who I am beyond the role of expat spouse. That's a very important one. Or even you can play with that and say who I am with the role of expat spouse, but in a way that satisfies you. What is your identity with this role? And once you have taken stock of who you are, it's often important to give to this identity a narrative that works for you. And for all people, all expat spouses I accompany, it's something we work on because they often don't know how to speak about themselves if they look for a new job, or if they're in a social environment where they have to present themselves. So we work on what is their narrative, a presentation of themselves, a pitch. How do they present themselves briefly when they are introduced to somebody? And that's very important to have a clear idea of who you are and clear idea on a clear way on to communicate it. So by giving time and attention to your identity reshaping, you can decide how you want to define it, basically. Next, it's a little quote to help you understand that. Identity is not given once and for all, it's constructed and transformed throughout life. And that's very important to acknowledge, basically, even more as an expat spouse. Yes. So that's a testimonial as well. I felt that I wasn't quite the same person. That's something that happens as well. When you are an expat, you change. Definitely you change. You are in contact with a new culture, with other values, with other people. So you change and you are not the same anymore. And maybe your desires, your needs, what you want are changing as well due to that. Second key is the basic needs. So as human beings, we all have some fundamental needs. When we go on not yet. You can. When we go on expatriation, actually the needs are out of balance. They are all a bit changing. Becoming aware of what are your needs today is one way to help you as well. You can change the slide. Thank you, Sebastian. Abraham Maslow is an American psychologist. He has put forward the fundamental needs of each human being. It's Hisory of Motivation. And it's an interesting tool to look at to understand what are your needs as an expat spouse. So first down, we have the physiological needs: eating, sleeping, drinking, clothing, warmth. It's important to meet them in order to go to the next step. It's not always automatically that you have, but yeah, that's really basic needs that you need to have. Then you have security needs. And that's an important one when you start an expatriation. At the beginning, you not always feel very secure because you don't know where you are and you don't know how it functions and so on. So it's an important consideration when moving to a new country. And when that's settled, when that's okay, then you pass to the next, which are the need of love and belonging. Expatriation upsets these needs because you are leaving your friends, you are leaving your family and colleagues. With the distance, you need to find a new way actually to communicate with them. For some of you, it's for some of us, for some of you, it's really difficult, this distance, depending if it's as well at what's happening back home. It can be as well more difficult. So it's it's really a need that we have to monitor all the time. In addition to that, you also must create a new social network in your new host country. And as a couple, I mentioned before, you need to readjust as well because your role have changed in the couple. And one need that is as well particularly at stake for the expat spouse is the one of belonging. Due to the professional breakup and this strange label that you have on your forehead as expat spouse. So it's to take stock of that and to know that it's needs that you need to you need to nourish as much as you can, but that they are a bit unbalanced at the beginning of an expat, at the middle, depending when. The next one is esteem. Is about self-confidence, self-respect, recognition, and appreciation. We mentioned that as an expat spouse is often difficult in this regard, and you don't feel always that you are recognized in your role and that you are esteemed with regard to what you do. And the last one is about fulfillment. It is important to say that it's a fundamental need. It's not just like that. It's necessary to have a good life. So as an expat spouse, you are entitled to fulfill your needs. And this need in particular, should it be with a paid activity or a volunteering activity, a personal project, whatever the way you can fulfill yourself. So you can go on the next. So as an expat spouse, what's coming, it's what I mentioned before, it's a turmoil of your needs, basically. And so what you need your needs are impacted, and what you need is to identify what your needs are today, what drives you today, what motivates you today, and that is what will mobilize you to act towards balance and fulfillment. By connecting with your needs, you will be, should they be satisfied or unsatisfied, it offers you a concrete avenue for action to take charge of them and to nurture them. So how you can do that? It's by asking yourself, for example, which of my needs are satisfied and unsatisfied? What do I need to do right now? What would I like to experience that I'm not experiencing right now? And these kind of questions. To be attentive to your needs. Next slide. Here it's the testimonial of the husband of an expat spouse who explains actually that she didn't know exactly what she needed anymore and how to go with that. Maybe next, if you had time to, I hope to read fast. This, it's a long one, is as well a testimonial that is interesting because this expat spouse explains that she started a bit worried that it would be difficult. Finally, she found her place. She liked it. But after a few years, she realized that today she needed something else because she based all her life around her children's needs. And now it was time after a few years to come back to her own needs, to take them into account as well. And that's often what is sometimes difficult as an expat spouse to do. So that was about the second key, the needs. The third key is about the phases of transition. You can change the slide, Sebastian. So what is important to know is that every external change systematically implies an internal transition. So for example, when you move abroad, when you change a job, when you get married, when you become a parent, when you lose a job, all of that are external changes that imply a transition in yourself. And becoming an expat spouse involves actually a huge inner transition. You have to reinvent yourself, to reinvent you in this role, to identify your place, your balance, and maybe later to relaunch yourself in the job market. So it's a lot of transition. And a transition is the fact that you internalize and you accept this external change. So that's a huge one as an expat spouse often. And what is important to understand as well is that if the change is quick, you move, you become a parent in one night or a few hours. the internalization of that, it takes much more time. You didn't take the statue at expat spout overnight. I'm sure it took you time to really be in these statues. So you can go to the next slide. William Briggs, who is a specialized in transition, said it's essential to understand what a transition really is about. It's a mechanic that allows our lives to move forwards. So I think that's a very important key. I will explain to you how it goes inside you on the next slide. So there are 3 phases actually in any transition. The first one is endings, and I think one of you will relate to that. When we transition, the first thing we have to do is to start with the end, meaning that we need to put an end to what was before, to close a chapter, to mourn what was before. And that's difficult when we leave something that we didn't like, but it's even difficult, it's as well difficult when we leave something that we liked. It's something that we need to do. And it's often complicated to putting an end to that. But that's a phase that is necessary. So that's the first phase. The second phase is the neutral zone. You have closed this chapter, but now what? And you don't know what's the next chapter. You don't know how to orient yourself. You don't know what are really your needs, what you want. And that's very uncomfortable, this phase. But if you are aware of it, it's as well the phase where all the opportunities are present. Everything is possible at that moment. It's the moment where we can change things if you want. And the third one is the new beginnings. It means that you pass the 2 first phases. You have clarified what you want, and from there you can start to go into action again. So that's to say to you that what you are experiencing, if at the moment you have a lot of questions, you don't find your place, it's normal. It's the phase of the transition. And to be able to move forward, it's to put an end to try to put an end to what was before, and then to take the time to clarify, take the time to reflect as well, and to activate your curiosity. We can go, voilà. So how can I find my place and balance? So fulfillment isn't a luxury, just as a reminder again, but it's a fundamental need. And despite the obstacles, it's necessary to find fulfillment, not only for yourself, but also for your partner and your family. So yes, that are the 3 keys I wanted to give you today about the importance to reshape your identity intentionally, to see what you want to do with your identity, what it is your identity, how to speak about it. Secondly, to assess what are your basic needs, what needs to be met, what needs to be nourished, and to be aware as well that you are going through transition phases that are just normal. And from there, if you are ready and still here, because I know for at least one of you it's very late, we would go into looking at what are the 4 steps to finding your place and the right balance. I just have a look at you. You are all fine? I hope so. Okay, so 4 steps to finding your place and the right balance. So wait, just drink a little bit. I will speak about a process I know is very useful to help you find out this place and the right balance. Whatever your choice, if it's to find a job or if it's for a personal project, whatever the obstacles in front of you, because you have many, like we saw before, a lot of things are at stake. So you can put the next slide, Sebastian. Here's just to recall your situation today. I don't know if you are exactly there, but to give a little image, a little illustration of that. At the moment, you, as an expat spouse, it's possible that you feel isolated on this isolated island overseas with no strong support and no recognition, facing an ocean of both difficulties and opportunities. And you know that your current situation no longer suits you, that you would like to initiate a change, but you're a bit lost. And the answer is there in the horizon, but the journey seems long to you and you don't know how to really go there. You may have lost a bit of your self-confidence. You are wondering how to get back on track professionally, if it's what you are looking for. You are wondering what's your next expat and what will be possible or not next time. And all these questions right now. So first of all, it's normal to have all these feelings, like we said before. You can go to the, and why it's normal to have all of that is because maybe today, for the moment, you are a man or a woman that is without a real purpose. And like it's Caril said, a woman or man without a purpose is a ship without a rudder. I don't know how you go with your expat, with your life as an expat spouse, if you have clear goals for the future, but that's something that is important if you want to move forward. So how to do that? The first step is a big title. It's to start to awaken your inner captain. I see so many expat spouses for whom their life has become so much their own reality that they have forgotten how adventurous and ready they are for challenges. And chances are that maybe you are in this case, today you face this ocean of what shall I do, what's next, who I am today. You are a little shaky and deep down you know that you need a change. So that's one thing, is to awaken this inner captain. You can put the next slide. And how to do that is to connect actually with the part in you that has proven many, many times that you are this incredible captain. When you decided to leave your country of origin, when you decided to leave your job, your loved ones, you didn't take the easy way. You made a courageous decision that a lot of people wouldn't dare to do, actually. And you choose to embark on this adventure despite the social, professional, personal costs involved for you. And you kind of wanted or accepted to break out of your straitjacket to experience something completely new, different, and atypical. And from there, I bet that you took charge. You assumed the role as a captain for all the logistical and family aspects. You ensured the success of the expatriation and the well-being of the whole family. You demonstrated leadership, creativity, resilience, and many other skills. And it's with that you need to reconnect today, because you have proven a lot of time that your adaptability and that you love challenges and that you know how to be this captain, actually. So how you can do that? It's starting by taking stock, and it goes back to some of the keys as well from before. Taking stock first of your level of satisfaction today in all areas of your life, not to focus only on I should find a work, I should work, what shall I do professionally, but to take stock of what is your level of satisfaction in all areas of your life. That helps you identify your needs, how to meet them, to clarify your desire, and so on. Next slide. It's just to illustrate a little bit of that. I'll let you read. So one way is to really reconnect to this person, and one way to do that is through the second step. You can change the slide. Second step is gathering your treasures and revealing your uniqueness. You can change. It's actually to start, as we mentioned, it's such a huge change, such a huge transition to become an expat spouse, that at one stage it becomes necessary to take stock. So the compass here illustrates the fact that it would be interesting to clarify what are your values today. Values change over time, change in contact of your life experiences, but your values are as well your guides. It's really your values that enables you to take the right decision, to clarify what are your priorities, to make room for what really matters, and so on. So it's important that you come back to that and to see what are your values today. The second thing is unfold your sales. So the sales here are your strengths, is to identify what are your strengths, your talents, what gets you in the flow, what gives you energy. And that is important to know, because if you don't deploy your sales, it's fine, you will not draw, but you will as well not move. You will stay in treading water. So it's really important to have really a good knowledge of what are your strengths, what puts you in the flow, and so on. The third thing is to have a look at your anchor, to raise it, your inner brakes or your inner limiting beliefs. A lot of expat spouses have limiting beliefs. And you need certainly to get rid of them. Most of them are wrong. And they are about who you are, what you have to offer or not, and about your environment as well, often. So it's really to take time to find out what are your limiting beliefs that holds you back and do not give you the opportunity to do what you really want to do. It's a way to peel off this label of expat spouse as well that tend to define me. Another thing is to dig through your treasure chest. So here it's to have really an exhaustive look at what are your experiences, your skills, your successes, your qualities, and all of that, because you will be surprised how rich actually your professional, even if you didn't work the last years, and if you work even better, but your professional personal path is very, very rich as an expat spouse, because you will not look at it only on a professional perspective, but as well all the personal experience and the soft skills that you have developed. And that's everything that will help you to really find out who you are today, basically, and take a fresh and realistic look at yourself and your personal professional path. It's helping you, if you need, to regain as well self-confidence and to feel aligned, actually. And this is a crucial step because the way you see yourself influences the way others sees you. So it's really important that you believe in you so that other people believe in you as well. Next slide. It goes with what Carl Rogers says, that when I accept myself as I am, then I can change. And that's true. We have to start to accept who we are as we are with this statue of expat spouse, but to be able then to change things, to make it the best for us. Next. That's a short, it's an expat spouse who didn't work during 13 years. So she needed to see herself differently. The third step is to clarify your next destination. Once you have taken stock of who you are today, what you have to offer, you are then able to really clarify what's next. You can put the next slide. And so from this island, you are now confident, clear about who you are and what you have to offer, and you can look far away. What I suggest here, which is very important, is to have a vision that is not only short term. We tend to do that as expat spouses because we don't know next year where we will be. But even if we don't know next year, even because we don't know where we'll be next year, we need to have a long-term vision. So it's to project yourself in 5 years, maybe even 10 years, and to say, what would be my ideal life in 5 years? What would be my ideal life in 10 years for all areas of my life? What do I want to do professionally? What do I want to do in my personal life, development, leisure, etc.? And by having this clear picture far away, it helps you today to take the right decision. It helps you today to know how to navigate with the transition in front of you that you are experiencing now, because you have a long-term goal. A lot of people tell me it's impossible for me to have a long-term vision. It's too far. If you have taken stock of who you are, connected with this inner captain and taking stock of your treasure and who you are today, then you can really easily project yourself in the future, actually. And it's really this long-term vision that will help you answer the question on how do I find my place and the right balance. You have changed. Good. You can let you read. Next step. Next slide, which is actually, there is no favorable wind for him who does not know where he is going. And it's really about that as an expat spouse. If you want to have a favorable wind for you, for your future and what you want, you need to know where you go. Without that, it's difficult to go, simply. You don't know where to go. So next step, next slide, setting your sails and stay the course. Now that you know who you are and what you have to offer, you have a clear destination in mind. From here, you can equip yourself for the right navigation map. So next slide. Basically, here is this navigation map is actually to draw and define what is your plan of action, what is your strategy to get where you want to go, to have a clear plan about the future. And that includes the obstacles and the solution about the obstacles. What is interesting is when you have a plan, you have a strategy, you can change it at any time depending on what's coming up. If suddenly you change the continent or you go in an expatriation that doesn't offer the same advantage, you will adapt your strategy, but you still have your final aim of where you want to go. And that gives you a lot of good energy, and you feel that you're in the right place because you know why you do what you do today, basically. Here, what can I say about, yeah, you are equipped. It's just to say that basically on the drawing. So, yeah, you can put the. So here it's a bit to say that through these 4 steps, you will know who you are, what you have to offer, what you really want, and how to achieve it. And that's really something that makes a huge difference. You can go on the next. So that's a summary. So about the 3 keys we spoke about: identity reshaping, fundamental needs, phases of transition, and the 4 steps. I have illustrated all of that with the captain, but basically it's really to take stock of what is your life satisfaction today, and to reconnect with the person that loves challenges in you, and then to take stock of who you are today, what you have to offer, how to communicate it, and clarify then your next destination. And from there, you have your strategy. I don't know if it speaks to you, if it makes sense to you, but to sum up, and we come to the end, the key is what Gandhi said so beautifully. The greatest of travelers is not he who has gone around the world 10 times, even if all of us have kind of done that, but is who has gone around himself or herself one. And that's mainly the key. As an expat spouse, we need to take the time to reflect on ourselves and who we are and what we want and so on. Next step, next slide, sorry, it's my belief here. The fact that I'm convinced that in every transition, whether desired or imposed, whether easy or difficult, I had both of them as well, there are always opportunities to seize and a chance to reinvent actually yourself a little, a lot, or with passion, depending on the circumstances and your wishes, basically. Next. And here we are, it's finished. So I hope it makes sense to you what I said. Since I don't see you, it's a bit more difficult to interact right now. We discuss all of that after the break. If you want to keep in touch with me, you can go on my website or invite me on LinkedIn if you're on this social network, or on Facebook, Instagram. Don't hesitate. I would be happy to connect. For those as well who maybe watch the recording, if you have questions about what I said or need to exchange about that, you can contact me easily through these different channels.